Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Do It Differently webinar series with host Tamar Krebs. My name's Caroline. I work at Group Homes Australia. I just wanted to thank you all for being here. We would love for you guys to pop your cameras on, but if you're shy, having a bad hair day, that's okay. You don't have to. So part of our culture at Group Homes Australia is that we explore, connect and share. So we'd love for you guys to do that with us today. So if you have any questions or comments or aha moments throughout the session, feel free to just pop them in the chat and Tamar can answer those. We also understand that you're all really busy. So today's session will go for 30 minutes and that'll include some question time at the end so you can chat with Tamar a bit. So today we are asking if we know what the best solution is for our clients. So we'll cover the importance of life story when it comes to care options, and we'll go over some questions, some examples of questions to get to know your clients quickly. And our host today is Tamar Krebs. She is the founder of Group Homes Australia. Tamar has worked in the aged care industry for the past 23 years, and she's recognised as a dementia and aged care expert internationally. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Tamar.
Good morning, everyone. Great to have you all here on a Wednesday. I just want to acknowledge everyone is probably at home going through their lockdown. So I hope that you have a cup of tea or coffee next to you and that we're lucky to spend the next half an hour together. Hopefully one day we get to spend it together, face to face in a room. But for now, we're going to look at each other on the screen. So one of the things when we talk about doing dementia differently, and I suppose what today we're going to be talking about is, do we know what the best solution is? And we've sort of given you the spoiler of telling you the answer before we give you the presentation. And I think one of the big things that education has done really well is to look at different students and understand that we all have different ways of learning. So if there's a child that are auditory, there are children that are tactile, there are children that are visual learners. And hopefully the education system is evolving for us to be able to celebrate children and the way and the style that they learn differently. Unfortunately, in the aged care industry, we haven't done that well enough yet. And so we anticipate that someone that has dementia or someone that is aging, that there's going to be a one size fits all. That you're going to need to stay at home with care or move into residential aged care. But it's a very much approach of, you have dementia, this is the problem, and we're going to treat you as a one size fits all. And so if we approach people in that way, we're going to fail. Because as you see in the picture, you know, we all have different strengths. We all have different weaknesses. We all have different needs and wants. So today, what I'm hoping to do is to create a lot of aha moments. And as there are people here that are from the industry or know someone living with dementia, or is a care partner or a support coordinator, a social worker, an architect, we have lots of different people here today from different parts of the industry. We're going to take a pause and I'm going to try and challenge your thinking. And often we'll have oh no moments where we're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. And today I'm hoping that we have a lot more aha moments where things are going to resonate with you and you're going to stop and think, ooh, I can do it a little bit differently. So that's what I hope we get out of today. So how do we know it's best? And when we look at people living with dementia, knowing who they are and knowing where they come from is a critical part of understanding their dementia journey. And I'd like to share with you two stories. Story of Barbara. So Barbara lives in North Sydney. She has her PhD in psychology. She's in her middle to late 70s and married and divorced twice, no children, doesn't have a big social network of friends, is quite an introvert. And one of the things that Barbara does every day is she leaves her house early in the morning and she goes around the neighborhood. People know her, they greet her. She goes to the local library. She'll spend some time in the library reading. And then she'll maybe go to the local pool. She might swim, she might not. She goes to a local coffee shop. But the neighbors start noticing that Barbara starts changing over time. And she's not as well dressed as she used to be. She's still really friendly, but she's not as well dressed. She's not as well kept. Her garden is overgrown. And when they come a little bit closer to her, they might notice that she's smelling a bit worse than she used to. And so they call the local aged care, whether it's the GRACE team, whether it's the ACAT team, whether it's the local hospital geriatric team, to say she needs to be cared for. Now, all of you sitting here, if you're from the industry, you're starting to think about, we have someone like that we got a phone call from the random neighbor, or we got a phone call from a friend saying we don't know what to do, and we need to do the right thing. And so we get a phone call at GHA about Barbara, that Barbara needs help. But what happens to Barbara before that is the aged care team gets involved, and they schedule her, they force her into a hospitalization, they get a guardian tribunal, an emergency tribunal, and the public trustee is appointed. And then she is placed in care. Now she's taken out of her home. She's done it in the intention to be safe, because often we have these words as industry leaders, we have these words of, we have a duty of care, we have a compliance issues, we have, we want to do person-centered care, we want for the safety of people, we want them to have nutrition, and we want them to be clean, and there's all these things that we want them to do. And so she gets placed in care, and yet it's not really Alexander, and nor is Barbara's name Barbara, for the sake of confidentiality. So I was in grand rounds down south in the Sutherland Hospital, and there was a room full of geriatricians, psychogeriatricians, interns, registrars, social workers, OTs, physios, nurses, support coordinators, discharge planners. And they were presenting Alex's case. Alex is a Polish immigrant who came here in his 40s. He now has dementia and lives at home. The geriatric team got a call from his neighbor, and they were sent out to go see Alex. Alex answered the door without his pants on, and it was 10 o'clock in the morning, and he was drunk. So the GRACE team was presenting the fact that Alex needs care, and Alex needs to be scheduled into the hospital and then taken out of his home. Alex had a cat, and the cat was making a mess in the house, and there were all these opinions flying around the room in the grand rounds about Alex and what should be done. And then this one very quiet registrar got up and said, but the chances are Alex always walked around his house without his pants. And the chances are he's always gotten drunk by 10 o'clock in the morning. And the chances are he's always had a bit of a messy house. Why do we have to schedule him? And she was very much dismissed, this registrar, of we have a duty of care for his safety, for compliance, for person-centered care. We have to do what's better. So I want to try and encourage the people today sitting on this webinar is that life story matters. And the reason life story matters is every single person sitting today in this session, we have different needs and different wants, different things that make us who we are. We have different backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, different norms. Some of us like to wake up really early. Some of us like to wake up late. Some of us like our coffee. Some like tea. Some like to shower in the morning, shower in the afternoon. Some of us are introverts. Some of us are very social. Some of us are, and every single person, every person's life story is going to contribute to their dementia journey, because who we were is who we are. And as our brain starts to change, we get very much attached to who we were. And our life story is essentially the front door, or it's the showcasing who we are. And instead of coming as a provider or as a healthcare professional or whoever you are from your profession, coming with, this is how we should do it. That's always a good alarm bell to say, uh-oh, we've gone into compliance mode. We've gone into duty of care mode. We've gone into a one size fits all when we say, you should do this. So I'm going to challenge all of you to, when we end this webinar and you go back to your workplaces, to not use the word should, because how do you know what the other person should do? We might have different suggestions. We might have a wealth of experience that we can help them to make different choices and support people to think a little bit differently. But none of us have the ability to tell someone what they should do. So at GHA, one of the big things that we learned early on was making sure that we have the right resident in the right home, but the right resident in the right environment. So when someone gets diagnosed with dementia, they're usually living at home at that point. And as we know, dementia is not an older person's disease. There are people as young as their 40s getting dementia and people in their late 90s. It's not a normal part of aging. And so there are people that will age beautifully without ever getting the disease. And there are people that are quite young that do get the disease. But the thing to keep in mind is when someone gets dementia, it doesn't automatically mean that we have to take away their driving license. We have to take away their credit card. They have to stop working. We have to shut them down from going out of the house. And that often is our misconceived or our preconceived idea that when someone has dementia, we have to shut them away from the things that matter to them, as opposed to expanding and saying, well, how do we help them and how do we support them to continue living in the world, in their society, and do things that are meaningful to themselves? How do we connect people based on things that interest them, as opposed to you have dementia and I have dementia, so we must live together in a residential aged care facility? One of the biggest mistakes we have in residential aged care is that there's a vacant bed and there's another vacant bed. Let's put someone with dementia and let's put someone else with dementia, but they might not have anything in common.
You're okay.
Sorry? Okay, that might not have been a question. And so it's really about being able to understand the right person for the right environment, the right person for the right care worker, if we're introducing care, if they need care, the right time of day, the right type of, and all that really depends on who the person is that is sitting in front of us. It doesn't always mean that we're going to know what's right for them, but it's asking the questions. So 5 key questions that at GHA that we ask in order to get to know someone quickly. And they're a little bit alternate because often we'll ask the question of, what did you do? What was your occupation? What do you like doing during the day? When do you like to shower? But I'd like to suggest that there are things that are a little bit different to be able to get to know someone and get to know what's meaningful to them. So the first question that we ask is, what matters to you? What matters to each person on this webinar today is different. You know, you might have a partner, you might have children, you might like your privacy. You might be a very public person. You might like to sit quietly and read a book. What matters to you is different to what matters to me. And being able to respect that and not have judgment. You might be someone that drinks at 10 o'clock in the morning. I might be someone that never drinks. And to not have judgment. And as care providers, we have to be able to refrain from having judgment of saying, oh, that's not important. If you're an animal lover and I'm not an animal lover, and I say to you, and you say to me, I love my dog, I have to have my dog. And I think, well, that's not important. I'm passing judgment. If what's important to you is being able to go to the bathroom on your own and you're incontinent, and I think, oh, it's fine, you'll just get help. I'm passing judgment. I'm passing what matters to me and projecting it onto you. And so as a provider or someone that knows someone living with dementia, or, you know, I see Nick Seaman here today, who is an architect, understanding someone, what matters to them in their environment is really important to be able to understand who they are. The question of an introvert and extrovert is a big question. Some people don't believe in it and they're ambiverts, but it's a very important thing when we're looking at someone with dementia. Are they someone that get energized and their social battery needs connection? And so they connect and they get energized by being around people? Or do they need to be in quiet spaces? And these are really important things. I, by nature, am an introvert, but I love connecting with people. But at the end of the day, I'm very aware of my social battery that it depletes. And so I need quiet time to be able to rejuvenate. When we think about people with dementia, people living beyond the diagnosis of dementia, we're constantly thinking of they need care, they need care, they need care. And the focus is on care, as opposed to what are their needs in order to be able to live with the diagnosis. And when we start looking at the care, we're really missing out on everything else that they have to offer. Care is a very, very small part of the person's day. We want to know about their hobbies. So often we have our occupations. Many of us here on the call today have an occupation that keeps us busy throughout the day. If we're retired, we might have different hobbies. It might be gardening, it might be cooking, it might be bowls, it might be going on a boat, there might quilting, whatever your hobby is. And so we want to know what rejuvenates you and what helps you flourish as an individual. You might still have an occupation that you can still get involved in. If you were a chef, if we can get you involved in cooking and baking. If you were a gardener, we can get you involved in gardening. But we need to know not just what the care needs are, but what makes you flourish as an individual. The other human needs, there's 6 human needs, and we won't have time to go through all of them in depth, but to understand the 6 human needs of a person. We all have different human needs, but there are 6 critical human needs that we all have. 2 of them are going to be dominant. And the 6 human needs are as follows. 1, the need for certainty. Some of us have a very high need of certainty, and that's predictability, schedule, planning. We need to be able to know what happens day by day. For some of us, we have a high need of uncertainty. So we need variation, we need surprises, we like changes, we like different things happening. And so certainty and uncertainty often will come, will contradict. If you have someone who likes to have schedules and someone who doesn't like to have schedule, that might contradict. Someone that likes predictability and someone that doesn't like predictability. The third human need is love and connection, the need for touch. Some of us love to be touched and hugged and connection, and some of us don't like to be touched. The fourth human need is the need for significance, giving compliments, feeling important, feeling valued, feeling relevant. And if you're someone that needs that and you don't get it, it's going to impact your self-esteem. If you're a person that needs connection and you don't get connection, you're going to feel isolated. You might get depressed. You might feel disconnected. If you're a person that needs certainty and there's a lot of uncertainty in your life, you're going to have unmet needs. So if you have something that you can't predict your day because you don't have a schedule and you're a high needs of certainty, that is going to create an agitation. That's going to create an unmet need. Moving on to the 6th human need is contribution, the ability to give back. So if you're someone that your entire life you've contributed, and all of a sudden now you're in a passive role, you're going to have these unmet needs of feeling useless, irrelevant, not needed. And so having the need to contribute is really important. And the last human need, the 6th human need, is growth, the need to learn new things, the need to explore new things. Often with dementia, we stop thinking of these 6 human needs as critical. We think, they have care needs. So we focus on showering, toileting, feeding, cleanliness. We don't focus on, they might need predictability. They might need contribution. They might need significance. They might have skin hunger. They might need to be touched. They might need feelings. They might need to be able to be involved in their community. Because we're so focused on that compliance, safety, duty of care, person-centered care. As providers, we have this need to comply as opposed to saying, what is this person's human needs? Who are they as an individual? How do I celebrate them? And we also want to know, who is your support network? Are you someone that lives alone? Are you someone that lives with someone? Do you have children? Do you not have children? Are you in a same-sex marriage? Are you not? Do you have a partner? Do you have a big circle of friends? Do you have a community? Do you have faith? Understanding a lot more about care is really important when we're looking to engage with someone needing care. I'm just going to, yes. So the question to you that I'd love to ask, and we have 9 more minutes to our thing, is, while we were talking and you're thinking about, you might have clients, you might have residents, you might have someone that you take care of, that you love, someone that you took care of. What were one of your aha moments that meant you went, whew, I did it really well? Or what were one of your moments where you went, oh no, I really screwed that up. I really could have done that better. So I'd love for you to put in the chat if you do want to share one of your aha moments or one of your uh-oh moments. An aha moment is, I'm really proud. I did that really well. I considered the person. I considered their needs. I considered, or the oh no moments where you use that word should and you think, ooh, I really put my own projection. I really projected my needs and what matters to me onto them. I'll give you a minute if you want to share in the chat or if you have a question. So Adele, you shared, thank you for sharing, that you created David Jones in your lounge room on a day that your mom was desperate to go to David Jones, but just couldn't get out there. I love that. I love that as an experience because you're creating and you're finding what's meaningful to her. So some people might say, ooh, that's lying. But what I believe that is, that's stepping into her reality and that's stepping into her world and celebrating her need for that moment. So that's fantastic. Love that. Anyone else want to share? Okay, so we're going to move on. Is there? So Ella, thanks for sharing. A memorable aha moment was when I would validate a lady who thought she was living on a cruise ship. We would go upstairs to the top deck and wave goodbye and then go back to the cabin, her room, for refreshments. I love that. So that's a fantastic, Ella, thank you for sharing that, because that shows, again, we're stepping into her world and her need to be able to be able to, you know, go on the cruise ship. I used to have a resident that he wanted to call the bank manager every single day and find out how much money he had in the bank. And so we made sure that he could call one of the team who had the same voice like his bank manager. And he would say, everything's under control. Your bank and your money is all under control. And that's all he needed. But the one day that he had the uncertainty was the day that we would create unmet needs. So the beauty of understanding those 6 needs of the need to be in David Jones, the need to be on a cruise ship, the need to be able to be in those spaces and to step into someone's world are those days that we exhale and we say, whew, that was an aha moment where we really understood the person and understood what matters to them in the end. Thank you for sharing that. At JHA, we have a concept called How Am I Unique? Before someone comes into care, we want to get to know them as much as possible, not just about the care, but about all the different things that I spoke to you about. The How Am I Unique really explains to us and gives us insight into their world of who they are as an individual, who they were, who they are evolving into, because dementia doesn't rob you of your personality. It makes your brain change. The environment needs to adapt. The people around you need to adapt. Your brain is changing, but we as society need to be able to adapt to you. So getting to know who you are, not just saying, well, you have dementia and these are all the things you need to do. And it can't always be around care. So I'd like to pause and ask if there are any questions. Was there anything that that you feel that you could do a little bit differently? But I'm gonna continue. Sorry, my thing is malfunctioning here. Did you have an aha moment during this webinar that you'd like to share before we go on? Sean says, thanks, Sean, for sharing that you liked the aha moment, that it was okay for someone to drink at 10 o'clock in the morning. Don't know that we would say that publicly because it might promote alcoholism, but I get it. It's an aha moment that if someone lived their life, their entire life, they might continue. Ella sharing that she loved the 6 needs and not referring to only care needs. So vitally important. Thank you, Ella. Really understanding the person and who they are. Excellent. So we're going to continue. You can continue sharing your aha moments in the chat as we go. So a little bit about GHA. We started in 2012. I started the company to be able to change the way we care for people living with dementia and the way we think about people living with dementia. And it's about helping people live beyond a diagnosis. Often we talk about in the industry, you hear people suffering with dementia. If someone's suffering with dementia, then we're failing them. If they're living beyond a diagnosis, then we're doing what we need to do. We're helping them live beyond a diagnosis. I have glasses. I do not define myself as a sight impaired person. I'm a person that lives with a sight impairment. And so it was really about changing the way we think about people living with dementia, whether they live in the community in their home, whether they live in a residential aged care facility, whether they live in a group home. We started out with 1 group home in St. Ives, and today we have 12 group homes, soon to be 13. We're opening our 13th home in August and building another 11 around New South Wales. The model is very much based on keeping people involved in the local community and staying connected. And so if a resident can get involved in the cooking, baking, gardening, shopping, anything that they can do, we want them to do. Our homemakers are there 24/7. And as the person progresses through their dementia journey and experience, as their brain changes, we adapt whatever we're doing so they can continue living in our environment all the way to end of life. The families are our care partners. It's a partnership between us and them. It's not about us taking over. It's about caring for their loved one with them. Our homes look, feel, and smell like your regular homes. They're beautiful, and the idea is that you can walk into any of our homes and say, I could live here. I don't know many times when you walk into residential aged care and you say, ooh, I'd love to live here. It's often, get me out of here. And so we want to make sure that there's smells of cooking and baking when you walk into a home, that there are looks and feels of a real home environment. Happy to open to questions. We have 1 more minute to go. So I'd love to over to you. And Caroline, if you'd read out the questions, that would be fantastic. Thank you to all of you for joining me today. John, you have a question? You want to unmute you? No, you didn't. You were just waving at me. That's okay. I'll wave back.
Same thing. The same thing.
You can either unmute or put it in the chat. Up to you.
Tamar, this is Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hi. In the different in some of your group homes, when you walk in there and you see a group of people doing something together, can you just run through some of the things that you see that surprise you, where you say, okay, I wouldn't have thought that 3 or 4 people would have been doing that? Or are there some examples of when you walk into your home, the fact that it looks like a normal home, or it's different to what people would see when they go to a residential aged care facility? What are the sorts of things that you see that make you realize that what you're doing is so different?
So you might walk into one of our kitchens and the residents will be at the bench top, and one person might be peeling potatoes, one person might be chopping a potato with a knife. And in residential aged care, there would be a work health and safety, and there'll be, you know, what if they cut themselves? And my question is, I cut myself in the kitchen all the time. I don't get a knife taken away from me. Or you might see a resident in the bar doing a barbecue and they say, oh, what if they burn themselves? Yeah, you know what? They're 80 years old. They've been doing this for the last 70 years. The chances are they're not going to. They might be riding a bicycle out on the street. They might be gardening. They'll be doing things that we're not going to eliminate the risk. We're going to mitigate the risk. And there's a dignity of choice. And so there might be someone that's at risk of falling, but they might actually be enjoying doing the gardening or the cooking or the baking or folding towels or going for a walk to the local coffee shop. They might get lost. So then what do we need to do to make sure that the family and ourselves are comfortable that if they do get lost, that we find them? It's a whole different way of looking at safety. It's not the goal, but what matters to them is the goal. Does that answer your question, Nick?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, it's 1:02. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you join us for our next webinar. I hope we're not in lockdown the next time I see you on the screen. And please be in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to host you in one of our homes. And if you have any questions, we'd love to answer them. And we'll be sending out a handout from this presentation on the 6 human needs so that you can have that to reference. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.